Ladies and gentlemen, it's with great pleasure that I come to you today to give you a sampling of my latest book, Childe Martin's Pilgrimage. Using the loosely structured narrative form and intricately built stanza form that made Lord Byron's psychological travelogue Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, 1812 to 1818, a bestseller all over Europe in his 20s, I offer you another verse memoir, this time from a senior poet of 81, including memories from many decades plus lively impressions of today. I relive the journal-like lyrical episodes that have meant the most to me. From childhood, teenage years, and adulthood, share my pilgrimage in these pages through the touchstones: joy in daily life, travel, friendship, spiritualities, music. I'm going to start with stanza 2, where in Byronic-style verse I introduce you to this poem by way of the topic humor. It's a memoir in verse, and the style is that by Lord Byron in his bestseller, Childe Harold's Pilgrimage. So let me just start by reading a little of it. What is a child? C-H-I-L-D-E. It's a very old word. It means a candidate for knighthood. And Lord Byron was, in fact, a noble poet. That's about enough of that. A knighthood candidate, the best-known traveller who ever penned a pilgrim narrative in verse would rate that status high. Lord Byron, genial friend, celebrity in youth, I pray you lend to me your pilgrimage and kindly aid my present day endeavour. I commend your vastitude of grandeur which had swayed your readers to enthusiasm, height so well portrayed. You were a youthful wonder. When you wrote your diary confession, people swooned. Allure of sport and scene would readers note. They followed you through Europe, fame ballooned. On viewing Waterloo, you were attuned to hero worship in the rise and fall of one whom first you prized and then impugned. You always saw yourself, in spite of all the ghastly deaths in Russia that would minds appall. You see, Lord Byron is in a way a news correspondent. He tours Europe, and in a very active decade, the decade of the Napoleonic Wars, and in fact, he visits Waterloo, and he can't refrain from comparing himself to Napoleon. The great, the extraordinary person, what happens to him? Lightning-like he rises and as quickly falls. So it's not terribly flattering all the time to compare yourself to Napoleon, but we'll see how that works out. Self-glorifying promos quite aside, long over that Napoleonic phase, you kept your lively mind. This is in Byron's later years. He only lived into his 30s, late 30s. He died fighting for the independence of Greece. 'Twill rightly guide whoever with your later writing stays. What so appealed and what I'll ever praise is what you in Don Juan, that's the way they say it in England, like to call mobility. Be flexible, amaze the folk who vainly talked about your fall. Brave, open-hearted, ardent, let your art stand tall. You noticed I started conducting after a while. And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, and it keeps going like that with very interesting and always required and always the same pattern of rhyming. And then you finally get to the climax, and every stanza has a climax, which is a 6-beat line. I love to write in this form, and so did Lord Byron, who praised it to the skies. And his guiding philosophy of life, I think, may be summed up in that wonderful word, mobility. The lithe and nimble little skiff survives, while storm winds batter down a lordly craft. Borne down in heavy glory, Lightness thrives, and smiling rides the wave. The sailor laughed, and granted bliss today when, slightly daft, I crooned some units of the mad Don Juan, and balancing upon my bobbing raft, paid heed to what you teach. When faced with ruin, toss overboard those olden goals, and try a new one. At 80 years of age, well, I'm 81 now. I started the poem when I was 80. One might expect a milding of times of youth, at times of youthful zeal. Instead, I show the opposite effect. For what's become predominantly real determines how I've chiefly come to feel. My secret is repeated puberty. For growth in spirit will it prove ideal, as poet Goethe bold delightedly experienced, observed, and testified, I see. So Byron had the motto mobility, and I'm adopting that, and along with Goethe's motto, which was repeated puberty. He said that in his old age to his friend Eckermann, eine wiederholte Pubertät in German. Now, let's see. Let's go to a sample. I promised to give you a sample, and I wanted to focus starting on 172. I want to focus on an episode of humor simply because I'm in a good mood today, and that's one of the many moods I make a lot of in this poem. I've spoken of the past, but don't forget, I tell myself, our show is on the road. The latest news I need to tell to set today's fine gift before the hero. Sowed in me a seed of gratitude had glowed this very evening, and I haste to tell what lively writing stimulus I've owed to Rick Garcia, who can cast a spell when charming child tales of New Mexico Upwell. My friend Rick Garcia decided to resume contact with me after a few decades, and he sent me a copy of his book of coal camp tales. A coal camp is a camp around a coal mine. When the coal mine runs out of coal, so does the camp collapse, and so it's an unstable and unstable occupation and an unstable community, because after all, it's quite a dangerous thing, and one of the things that confronts you is hazards in the coal camp. But one of the consolations is telling good stories in a close-knit community. Close shave for Black Jack Ketchum. That's a particular story I loved in this presentation. We can start our coal camp stories with this character. Our narrator, a barber, will impart what nightmare fright the bully might confer. The styles required for hair, beard, mustache were the sort that tested every barber skill. The tiniest of errors might bestir an itchy trigger finger, which could kill. One slip-up, and the blackjack ire might overspill. Tonsorial perfection amply proved each time the jumpy gunman's lucky fate. With artist gift, the barber never moved. By apprehension, no one could berate. Tonsorial perfection, triumph great, attained in patient and determined mood, productive of the style demanded. Hate was never sparked, nor wild expression crude. Our village barber all resentment could elude. But Black Jack Ketchum had to face one day la suerte, muerte, fate, death. They rhyme in Spanish. Caught and hanged, he died. The corpse's head fell off without delay. No stylish barber craft could be applied. Refinements were this final time Denied. The beard and hairdo were extremely rough. The barber, though, was calmly gratified. Of orders from a crook, he'd had enough. Dissevered, buried head, for maggots not too tough. This entertaining tale brought back to me a Turkish barber jest of early days, famed Nasreddin, who once agreed to be a barber for great Tamerlane. Small praise would earn, the king is weeping. Baffled stays the barber. Why the crying? What to do? To such a visage, how to lift my gaze? My mirror image, what an ugly view! So hideous, and yet a king, the thought dismays. The tearful stream such deep unease conveys, great gloom enfolds them both, a tristful view. Now when the king is still, the tearful craze continues. Look, the barber's crying too. I'm ugly, thus my long lament, but you, why weep? You looked a quarter of an hour. 'Twas time enough to make you tears bestrew. A bigger problem made my spirit cower. To see you all day long, I barely have that power. Another legend tells that Tamerlane was planning to besiege the very place where Nasreddin was staying. It was plain he'd have to brave the tyrant's frowning face and try to ward off trouble. Not a trace of fear he showed. Turn right around. I know, if military plans you don't erase, what I'm prepared to do to end this woe. What's that? Just run away as fast as I can go. These anecdotes recall the happy mood that Nasreddin continues to awake. In young and old and rich and poor, endued with liberties the clown may freely take, by symbol shows of power that can shake, if only for a moment, mental chains imposed by dead conventions, for the sake of latent waking freedom. Comic gains are clear, satiric pleasures drive away our pains. At kiosk or in bookstore we can find, when taking walks in Istanbul, delight in jolly Nasreddin, who, unaligned with outward notions, joked. A pleasing sight, the comic books, the lovely tomes bedight in fancy, golden framing, days of yore recalling. Sometimes they're expensive, quite. The many centuries when heretofore the Turkish readers might their jester loved adore. Just now, on Science Friday, BBC, about a clever grade school boy, we learned, whose seagull cries could make so faithfully that in a bird call contest he had earned first prize. My Turkish travel days returned to mind. Lark, lark, yours, yours. The stork which flew to nest atop a minaret discerned that all the vernal heaven, brightest blue, belongs to us who breathe. Our faith we blessed renew. In Turkey, the place is simply filled with, at least in large expanses of it, with storks that love to build their nests in the minarets of mosques. And they have their special distinctive bird cry sounds to the Turks like lark, lark, which translates into Turkish as yours, yours, meaning it all belongs to God. That's why the stork is deemed a pious bird. Renewal, yes, rebirth. You feel the gift that daybreak, I'm thinking of the storks, reawakening bestows on every human soul, whose mood 'twill lift. From every breath we ever took arose such wonder power, so the Scripture shows. I'm going to quote the Quran now. Verse 47, Surah 25. God makes each day a resurrection. Flows of wind and air in breathing are alive. Our being is in motion, woken, strive and thrive. Now, I'm running into a little problem. I did run into this problem one day. Despite my declaration that I am blessed with the gift of repeated puberty, I did look in the mirror one morning and was rather alarmed that what I saw didn't suggest a thing like puberty at all. It suggested a guy who was getting older, and I don't feel old, and I wondered what to do about that, and suddenly I had a cure. I'll explain it to you just in case. I don't want the point to be missed. I wrote it up in a special poem which I shoved into this very loosely structured little epic about my life, and that is... I was brought up Jewish, so I had some study of Hebrew, and I learned, of course, one of the very first things, that the language is not read from the left to the right, the way we do, but from the right to the left. Now, if you take the number 81, if I'm 81, and that's the truth of it, however, that can be variously interpreted. In the Hebrew interpretation, please read it from right to left, 81. Let's begin at the right and read the 1. And then let's proceed leftward and read the 8. I'm 18! Here's my poem. Let's make a sweet song for a Passover birthday, my favorite annual chantable mirth day. It merits a hymn of elation and praise, especially now in spectacular ways. The depth to attain of the holiday's meaning, quite novel interpretive skill will be gleaning by using a reading technique I've devised that's clear and revealing and won't be disguised. Think back to the past, second eve of the fest. Oh, wonderful time, the occasion we blessed. Twice over, on Pesach my life I'd begun, and how many years have I lived? 81? You look in the mirror, and what do you spy? A face that appears rather older than I, who feel in the heart of my being, forsooth, the energy, verve, and the vigor of youth. It suddenly struck me, with let there be lightning, a thought that my soul life would vastly be brightening. Don't read 81 in the westerly way, but give it an easterly reading today. The right to left reading of Hebrew will be, to joy splendescent, the excellent key. Just read 81, right to left 'twill be seen. Yours truly is Jewishly really 18. Well, number games are fun, but even here the storyteller's drive to write some lines awakes when memory makes reappear a deeper pattern that the heart divines. A Coal Town outlaw legend reassigns a tale about a Turkish barber jest. A youthful seagull crier redefines a stork song pious cry, the holiest. Forgotten themes revived are frequently the best. I want to thank you for listening with me. I hope you'll enjoy this book. It was sheer fun to write.